Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've got a special video for you. We're going to be doing Jace versus Jace. We got two new mono blue Jaces that came out in fairly recent times here in the game. We had Jace the Perfected Mind come out last set, and we have Jace Reawakened that came out this set. So we're talking about Murders at Call of Mana for Jace the Perfected Mind, and Outlaws at Thunder Junction for Jace Reawakened. So why am I doing it this way? Well, for one, I didn't really give you a proper review of Jace the Perfected Mind when he first came out. I wasn't super thrilled about him. I've grown to like him a lot more over time. But since they are so new, and I don't know if a lot of people have either one of these, I thought that this would be a good opportunity to give you more information and make an informed decision, just in case you're looking at either one of these and thinking, okay, which one should I get? I don't grind as much as some people, so I don't have a ton of crystals yet, and I don't plan on having a lot, so I got to maximize my resources, which is, a great way to think about it, especially if you are free to play. So this is here to be a guide for you, and maybe you can make your own decision from it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Jace the Perfected Mind, we can go through his hit points, his mana bonuses. So he's got okay hit points, 107. Not the best, but also not great. Everything over 100 is not bad in my book. Can be better, but Jace typically doesn't have a lot of hit points anyway, so his mana bonuses are fairly flat. He gets +2 on black and white and +5 on blue. And these days, when it comes to mono colored walkers, you really want to have high mana bonuses in their Planeswalker color, and you also want to have solid mana bonuses in at least two of the other colors available. So I think Jace Perfected Mind has decent mana gains, and we can look at Jace Reawakened. Same sort of thing, a little bit better in hit points, so that's already a check mark in his favor. He also has +2, +4, and +3, and +1. So it's similar to Duretti's mana spread, where he had one mana bonus above the rest, and then it kind of just stair steps down in the mana bonus as you go, and then -1 on red, which is okay. Pretty solid mana bonuses in this way. I think I prefer Jace Reawakened, and when we get to talking about their passive abilities, this will also be a factor. So let's talk about Jace the Perfected Mind. Ability 1, create 3 Pheresis Converter tokens. Then if you have 80 or less life, create X Phyrexian Gems. X is half the number of cards in your opponent's graveyard, rounded up. And mono blue, even in Legacy, well, everything right now that has to do with Phyrexian Gems is in Standard, but there's nothing in Legacy that actually makes Phyrexian Gems either. So he's a little bit tied to the set mechanic in that way, but it's kind of an older set, and it will be rotating out next year. So we won't have to worry about that for a while, but there just isn't a lot in just mono blue that creates Phyrexian Gems or really interacts with it. So I don't know if this makes a lot of difference for you as far as a standalone ability goes. It just really kind of helps a bit with his third ability, which we'll get to, of course. And so if you're not familiar with what the Pheresis Converter token does, it's a 4 shield support. And when you match a Phyrexian Gem by swap, the first card in your hand without completed gains completed. This effect can trigger only once for all cards named Pheresis Converter you control. Even if you have all 3 out and you match more than one a turn, it's only going to give you 1 card to gain completed. So that is how that works. Then, if the support has the augmentation emblem given to you by his third ability, your opponent's mana bonus becomes -1 until the end of their turn. So it just knocks your opponent's mana bonuses down a little bit. It's okay. I don't feel like the mana bonus -1 type of effects do a lot for you in a really meaningful way. It's the least impressive part of, all the whole blue PMA mechanics, the denial and all that. But it's fine. It's not going to hurt you at all, at least. Jace Reawakened's first ability. Now we're getting to some more interesting things here. Psychic Manipulation. Discard the last card from your hand, gain X mana, and X is the base cost of the discarded card. So that's great because basically all you need to do is just get your loyalty up enough to use this. And if you have a lot of high cost cards in your deck, you discard one of them and you get so much mana to hopefully fuel the rest of your cards in there. And this is a fantastic ability. One of my favorites in recent memory. And really, it might be one of the better first abilities in the game. That's how much I really enjoy working with this ability. And this is a huge mana advantage. And it really doesn't take much to build for it. And the dividends that it pays out are great. We got Corrupted Minefield, ability 2. Destroy the top 5 cards of your library, of your opponent's library, I want to say. Then all opposing creatures get -X0. X equals the number of cards destroyed from your opponent's library this turn. So this, depending on what you're doing, if you're milling your opponent for specific reasons, then destroying the top 5 cards of their library might be fairly beneficial. But, debuffing the power of your opponent creatures can help save you a little bit of hit points as your opponent goes after you with their creatures. But, I'd rather just get rid of creatures or, disable them, make them can't attack, any sort of thing like that, rather than debuffing them, because all they need to do is just reinforce their creatures. And then a lot of times the -X just isn't enough to keep your opponent from hurting you, which is always what you're trying to do, right? Memory Reversal. This is Jace Reawakened's second ability. Return up to 1 random opposing support to their owner's hand. This can affect vanguards. Return the first opposing creature to their owner's hand, then increase the cost of those cards by 6. So that's great. I believe that this will work even if your opponent doesn't have room in their hand. It will just destroy those instead of bouncing them to their hand or not being able to bounce at all. So that is fantastic. Getting rid of 2 of your opponent's cards on their side and then making it difficult to return to the battlefield, that's great. I really like that ability, but it's not even its best. Illusion of Free Will, ability 3 for Jace the Perfected Mind. Okay, this is to me the best ability of Jace the Perfected Mind. If you don't control support named Phyresis Converter, create it. Phyresis cards you control gain the augmentation emblem. Create 12 Phyrexian gems and gain 3 mana for each non-basic gem on the board. So that's the main part of this. Gaining 3 mana for each non-basic gem on the board. So even if you don't have any non-basic gems, so really any non-basic gem will work. Any type of special gem, any type of simple token, any token at all, any support, vanguard, whatsoever, they all count for this. By creating the 12 Phyrexian gems when you first use this card, you're already starting with 36 mana just from using this ability. So that's great. And then that is how you get the augmentation emblem on your other Phyresis Converter supports. So if you don't already have one, it makes one for you. But if you use this first ability, then they'll all get the augmentation emblem. I personally just go straight for this ability. I don't feel like the augmentation emblem on the Phyresis Converters really do enough for me to justify using the first ability in the early game. So I pretty much just try to spam his third ability as much as I can. Jace Reawakened, Telepathic Shock, Ability 3. Drain all mana from your opponent's hand, then deal X damage to your opponent's Planeswalker. X is 45 minus the amount of mana drained from their hand this way. So this is a fantastic ability as well. It's a win con, and it is also a really good way to screw your opponent out of mana. So does double duty, has two great effects. Most of the time when I'm playing Jace, though, I try to keep most of the time when I'm playing this Jace, I try to do things to keep my opponent from having mana in their hand anyway, so that I maximize the amount of damage that his third ability can do to them. Because a lot of times I'm just kind of setting up to get to this one and spam it along with other things that will be used as win cons as well. So he's a really good Planeswalker for if you're playing a lot of control, because he has a built-in win con, and you can do everything else you can to make sure that you can use this to your advantage and as many times as you want. And let's talk about their passives. So Jace the Perfected Mind, I think his passive is really where it's at when it comes to this Planeswalker. At the beginning of your turn, if you have less than 4 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the difference. So I thought that meant that you will draw cards until you have 4, but it actually means you draw cards until you have 5. So you always start your turn with 5 cards in your hand, which can be really good. You can do a lot to take advantage of that. Anything like Steam Core Scholar that gets more strong as you draw more cards, or anything that if you're discarding cards from your hand, this will make sure that if you're either getting your hand discarded or you're just doing things like exiling from your hand for whatever reason, this will always make sure that you have 5 cards in your hand to start with, and you will have options at the beginning of your turn, especially if you're using his third ability to get a bunch of mana into them. So his passive and his third ability is really where it's at with this Planeswalker. And Jace Reawakened, his passive ability is no slouch either. So when you draw your first card each turn, if this is turn 1, 2, or 3, your blue mana bonus is increased by 1. So pretty much, if you're able to draw a card each turn in normal circumstances, you'll be doing that. So this pretty much means by your third turn, your blue mana bonus is going to be at +7 instead of +4. So he gets better as you go just by being in the match. Once you get past that turn, it does this instead: increase the cost of the last card in your opponent's hand by 4. So if you're keeping your opponent from having a lot of cards to begin with in their hand, yeah, this is just going to be making it harder for them to cast cards, to cast that one card that they might have in their hand. But that part of this ability isn't one that I think about as much. It's really about the blue mana bonuses increasing, which is pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen them do that with a Planeswalker before. So let's talk about the pros of Jace the Perfected Mind overall. His passive ability ensures that you always start with 5 cards in your hand under normal circumstances, and his third ability always gives you at least 36 mana from one trigger. Jace Reawakens pros. His first ability has the potential to give you as much mana as you choose, and his passive bumps up your blue mana bonus so that you're getting 10 mana a match by turn 3, and his third ability is a win con. But what about their cons? So his second ability is not that strong, and it still doesn't appear to affect your opponent's creature after the first trigger. That is something that I brought to their attention numerous times. I have no idea if and when they will ever fix that. And there also aren't a lot of Phyrexian cards for mono blue to take advantage of. This is both in standard and in legacy, so making a lot of Phyrexian gems for mono blue just doesn't really do a lot for you, unfortunately. So I wish that there were more that did more with Phyrexian gems to make this worthwhile, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I pretty much ignore that part of his kit. Jace Reawakened's con. His abilities actually don't give you any card advantage like most mono blue walkers have, so you really have to build card draw into your decks. So now that we've gone through everything here, I feel like you might have an inkling as to which one I'm giving the edge to here. But let's actually look at some battles and go from there. All right, so this first deck for Jace the Perfected Mind is all about basically taking advantage of drawing a lot. So obviously knowledge is power is going to be in here because it's not only going to be giving us 2 mana every time we draw a card, but it's also going to be reinforcing the creatures that we have out. So that's incredible, especially for the amount of creatures we're going to be using here. And even though they're small creatures, we're going to be drawing so much that it's going to be reinforcing them so often that we're going to be doing pretty good amounts of damage just from knowledge's power reinforcing our creatures so much. And we also got Steamcore Scholar, who is one of my favorite blue creatures right now because of the loyalty and mana gain that it gives you just by having them on the board and keeping them around long enough. You really get those levels up pretty high, and it's going to be giving you so much mana as you go, and you're going to be using it to gain a lot of loyalty, which will also in turn help you keep using his third ability over and over again every turn that you need to. So you're going to be getting a lot of mana at the end of your turn because of his ability triggering off of the levels that are built up from card draw. And then your next turn, you should be able to use his third ability, and that should probably give you the rest of the mana that you need to charge up the rest of your hand with mana. So they're going to really be feeding off of each other. Knowledge is power, Steamcore Scholar. But we also got Duelist of the Mind, which is a card I know a lot of people are not playing with this one, but it's actually pretty good. I mean, it is an outlaw, which I guess will help with certain things. But really what I like about it is it kind of reminds me of that zombie we had back in Shadows over Innistrad that would make you discard your hand and then draw 5 new cards. Duelist of the Mind basically does that, but this triggers every time you draw, and so he gets buffed every time you draw a new card. Just by casting or summoning this creature, it's going to be starting at a 6/3, but with all of the card draw that we're going to be having in this deck, you're going to be getting this guy to a pretty decent size pretty quickly. So he's mostly in here to force card draws, but he can be a decently sized creature to attack with as well, with everything else happening in here. Cut your losses, pretty self-explanatory why that's in here. Major blue gem conversion. Time reversal and Days Undoing are both really good because these both not only will be helping you get more mana into your hand, but also they're going to be denying your opponent the cards and mana that they've been trying to build up on their side while you do your thing. So pretty wicked in that way. Time reversal, its only problem is that it auto casts, which I wish they would get rid of auto casting on spells, but you know, that's just how it is in the game for now. Time reversal will give you mana equal to the amount of blue gems on the board, and with cut your losses, that is a pretty good possibility. Days Undoing will give you 3 mana to every card in your hand just automatically. But if you have Knowledge's Power on the board, then that first card will get an extra 10 mana, therefore helping you keep whatever loop you might have going. Lock and Load, great new masterpiece from the new set. I always forget to use the plot ability of Lock and Load, which can be pretty good, but I mostly use it for the card draw and then guaranteeing to get 2 cards with full mana at the end of the spell resolving. So that's what I mostly use it for. Follow the bodies. I did a whole video on follow the bodies. So if you're interested in that, you should check it out. But it's a great loop enabler because it draws cards, gives the cards in your hand half their mana. So if you chain 2 of these together, that's going to be giving your cards, or at least most of them, because it rounds down. It should be giving most of your cards their full mana just by chaining 2 of them together. Void Rend is good because, it's just a good all around removal spell. Just in case things are able to get out or you get a bad start, whatever, your opponent gets a faster start than you for whatever reason. This is a good card to just knock down any threats that they might throw out at you as you go. There's not much defense in this deck other than kind of card and mana denial. So you do need some hard removal in any deck, really. You might, if you want to play it a little safer, add another removal spell in there and take out one of the card draw spells, maybe. But, it's up to you. Academy Elite. This is a great card because with all the spells that you're going to be discarding, you're probably going to let this card hit the board. It's going to be reinforcing a lot just from the course of going through your looping cycles. So this will be a good win con. In a matter of a few turns, you'll probably be able to put this creature up in the 50s or more, and just a few turns with that much power should be enough to deal with most opponents. So Academy Elite ends up mostly being the win con in this deck a lot of times, though Duelist of the Mind can hold its own. But it also has the added advantage of letting you draw a couple cards every turn, which will then keep fueling the Steam Core Scholar, Knowledge is Power, and whatever have you. So this deck is really just all about maximizing card draw and taking advantage of Jace's abilities in that way. So that's what I had in mind as I was building it. So now that you've seen it in action, let's talk about the deck that I built for Jace Reawakened. Okay, so this deck is a completely different idea. And like I said before, it's built on denying your opponent mana and basically using his ability and Jace the Perfected Mind Vanguard as the biggest win con here. It could probably do enough damage with building up your creatures, but that's a little bit slower than we want. But Jace the Perfected Mind and his third ability really speeds up the wins here. So we got Cut Your Losses to, help things get going. Ambiguity is great for denying your opponent cards, mana, creatures on the board. Helps you out by creating denial gems that you can then convert into time bubbles, which then reconvert back into denial gems, creating a bunch of blue gems for you to match into and give you mana in that way. So that's how that goes. I made a whole video on blue PMA to explain how ambiguity works. So if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free to check out that video. Just scroll down a bit in my video list. But anyhow, Commodore Guff, a brand new Vanguard. I still need to make a video on how to win using the new Outlaws at Thunder Junction Vanguards, and that will come soon. But there's a lot coming down the pike when it comes to content that we content creators need, quote unquote, to create. So that might be a little while. But Commodore Guff, I am mostly using him for his -2. So his -7 can help a little bit in winning as well. But his -2 is great in that you get the shields up and you're going to be getting a lot of mana from all the other things that are going to be on the board. You're going to be having time bubbles. Your other supports will be on the board as well. So it's going to be giving you a decent amount of mana when you have everything going here. So that's what I mostly use it for, but it's a really good Vanguard that can do a lot for you. And it also helps build up the shields of Jace the Perfected Mind so that you can use that a little bit more often. Steam Core Scholar, just like the last deck that I showed you, very important in blue right now to be able to use your loyalty abilities more often and faster. So definitely got to get Steam Core Scholar down first or as soon as possible. Jace the Perfected Mind, like I said, is a great win con because you're going to be not only discarding cards from your opponent's hand, but you're going to be milling their graveyard by Cut Your Losses and by our next card here, Jin Gitaxias Core Augur. So that's going to be upping the damage that Jace Perfected Minds -3 will be doing for you. So it's a little bit more of a late game strategy to play this one, but it's good to have it out there. It'll do a little bit to slow down your opponent, his +1, but it's really about using it in the late game as a win con. Jin Gitaxias is very strong in this deck because it's going to be not only denying your opponent all of their cards, but it's going to be giving you cards because you're going to need some card draw in this deck. And Jin Gitaxias will be the way of doing that. So what you do is you can put Jin Gitaxias in the graveyard by using his first ability. And that will give you 24 mana that you can then just make one more swap and get the Portal to Phyrexia down. And assuming that you're putting the mana you get from Jin Gitaxias into the portal, and then you, on your next turn, can bring Jin Gitaxias down on the battlefield, and you'll be wrecking your opponent. It's very scary when Greg plays Jin Gitaxias on you because that means you're going to have to do something with the cards in your hand that turn, or else you're going to lose them next turn, or else you're going to lose them by the end of it. So this is a devastating card to face, and it's one of the keys to winning with this deck. Portal to Phyrexia, you should know what this card does by now. It's a very high cost card to just cast, right? But what we're doing with it mainly is using it for the mana. If you happen to have two of these in your hand, what you could do is just use his first ability to power up the first one and go ahead and cast it. And that's how you get it on the board as well. Same thing really for any of the cards in your deck. You can do it that way. So Containment Construct is here because of that first ability, discarding that first card in your hand. So Containment Construct is mostly here because it will bring back a card from your graveyard if you use his first ability. So you don't have to lose a card if Containment Construct is on the board. It'll just bring a new card in to replace the one you just discarded. So that's great. And it'll make sure also that Steam Core Scholar doesn't toss away too many cards from your hand either when you're using it or when you put it on the battlefield. So that's the main reason it's there. You could put something else in instead of him if you don't like that, but I find it useful not to have to lose cards to discard. Key to the Vault is a strong card. It will take, whenever your first creature attacks, you get the next card in your library and it gets full mana. And you can either choose to play that card or you can use his first ability to power up the rest of your cards. It really depends on what you need at the time. But, it's just really good card advantage there. And mana. One with the Multiverse is mostly here to power up my other cards with his first ability because of that 25 mana gain. But if you can get it on the board, it's a very good card to have because you're getting a free card every turn, or you're going to be converting 6 gems to blue, which will hopefully help power your ambiguity or make your Cut Your Losses more advantageous when you cast it. So that's everything in this deck. And as you can see, It's not the greatest deck against GTA, I have to say. It doesn't have a lot of built-in stop gaps for that. So you may, instead of using containment construct, put in something that will have flash or something to deal with or disable one of your opponent's creatures, something like that, so that you get a little bit more time to carefully and patiently build up your deck for winning with this deck. But when things are going right, you really have a chance to make sure that your opponent can't really do anything much against you. And you can just pick them off with the Jace Vanguard and his third ability. It's really fun and really cool to see and pretty unique. So now that you've seen how I build for each one individually, I want to share with you a deck that I built for both of them in mind and see which one pilots it better. All right, so we're watching the two different Planeswalkers play with the same deck here. This is a deck that I have been using for the event Follow the Clues. And so I thought that this was a pretty well balanced deck. It has a lot of the principles that I talked about in my tutorial on how to build a winning deck for 2024. And it's got a few little things unique to Jace, the Planeswalker himself, where we got some card draw built in. Jin Gataxias, we talked about before. Got a little bit more defense in this deck as well, because we got not only Kami War, but Ambiguity, and then Time Walk to help fuel that ambiguity and really get a lot of time bubbles on the battlefield. And then Temporal Adept is not a very strong creature, but it has a good ability where anytime a support is destroyed on your side, it will bounce your opponent's creature. So if we're playing with Follow the Bodies, that means we're going to be creating a lot of clues, right? So Cryptex and Follow the Bodies and Ambiguity and Time Walk will be creating a lot of time bubbles. So clues automatically destroy themselves after a couple turns, but we're going to be trying to match them if we have Temporal Adept and your opponent has a creature on the board. But it really shouldn't be a big deal. It's just kind of extra insurance, but it's a nice creature to have in play. And I was using him in Follow the Clues because I didn't want to win too quickly, and it would help with one of the slower speed objectives. So this deck can win faster than I usually let it in that regard. But, as you could see, different things are happening with the Planeswalkers, how they are piloting the decks, how they are played. Jace Reawakened's side looks like it's doing a little better when it comes to keeping things on the board and getting them on the board. But I feel that Jace, the Perfected Mind, takes a little bit longer for things to get going. His kit, you kind of have to stall to get to the parts of the deck that give you a lot of card advantage or mana advantage as well. But there's a lot that you can do with either one of these Planeswalkers. I think they both handle this deck well, but you can really, as you watch the battle, make your own decision as to which one you like more when it comes to how they pilot this particular deck. But as always, when you're using a Planeswalker, you're really going to want to build around their abilities or whatever advantages they give you. So one deck is never going to be a one size fits all, but I think that this deck has a lot going for it that any mono blue Planeswalker can use. So at this point, Jace, the Perfected Mind, has come into a lot of the cards, and it's just really helping to get everything that's already down a big advantage. And then at this point with Jace Reawakened, it's going to win a little faster because we have more things in our kit to help win. So in that way, if you want faster wins, you probably want to go with Jace Reawakened. If you want to have a little bit more control for hitting objectives, casting cards and whatnot, any sort of events where you have to be a little bit more patient and controlling to scoop up all the rewards from the objectives being met, then you've got that going for yourself there. So it really depends. Are you going to be using either of these Jaces for events? When you pick up a Planeswalker, are you just looking to see if one will give you a better advantage in coalition events to get more prizes, or are you just looking for a new Planeswalker to have fun with? I think both reasons are valid. Everybody plays the game for different reasons. Everybody has different things they like and dislike about the game. But I want to give you enough options and perspectives to make an informed choice about whatever route you want to go. So take a look at both battles, see which one you think fits your play style better, and go from there. But I'm going to do my best to give you my most objective takes on the Planeswalkers next here when I give you my grades on them. Oh, and by the way, I did speed up Jace the Perfected Mind's battle a little bit just so that you don't have to sit here and watch the entire battle while I sit silent. So I do think Jace Reawakened is a little bit better at winning games fast, though. That still stands. All right, let's do this. Grades against each other. So, gotta start with maximum hit points. Pretty self-explanatory. The higher, the better. So, we got a B plus for Jace and a B for Jace the Perfected Mind. Just a small difference in between each number, but it's enough to bump Jace up half a grade. We got mana spread. Gotta give it to Jace Reawakened because his mana spread is a little bit stronger across all colors, and he has the ability to grow in mana bonuses. So gotta give Jace Reawakened the edge here too. Ability 1. So I don't think Jace Perfected Mind's ability 1 is very good at all. It does close to nothing for you in most cases, just used on its own, and it doesn't even do a lot for you even in conjunction with ability 3. It's a very useless ability if you ask me. Jace Reawakened, on the other hand, has a fantastic first ability that can give you tons of mana early on in the game, and that's when you mostly need it. So I'm giving it an A plus and Jace the Perfected Mind a D. Ability 2, Jace the Perfected Mind just slightly slows your opponent down, whereas Jace Reawakened can really mess with your opponent by putting their first creature and one of their supports back in their hand. So that's really nice control. So I give Jace the Perfected Mind a C on his second ability and an A minus on Jace Reawakened. Ability 3. So this is where it gets interesting, right? Jace Perfected Mind, his third ability is, to me, where it's all at when it comes to him, that and his passive ability, which we'll get to. And so the amount of mana that you can gain from that ability is super strong. And although Jace Reawakened's third ability can do a lot for you in terms of control, and is an extra win con for you. So very evenly matched, actually. But I give the edge to Jace the Perfected Mind, that an A plus versus an A. Their passive abilities. Jace the Perfected Mind, his passive ability is one of the best in the game, I want to say. That really will help you get to the cards that you want every turn and ensures that you have a wide variety of options available to you at the beginning of your turn that you can then use his third ability to fill up with mana, hopefully get your board state to exactly where you want it. His passive, though, Jace Reawakened, is very good. raises your mana bonuses over time. That extra ability of knocking your opponent's mana gains down a little bit is okay, but really not the reason you're playing this guy. So I gotta give the edge over to Jace the Perfected Mind in this regard as well. So S versus A, both very good. Versatility. So I do think that they can use the same amount of cards in a very similar way. Their strategies kind of push Jace Reawakened toward a certain type of play style. Jace the Perfected Mind is maybe slightly more versatile, but in a way they're about equal because Jace the Reawakened maybe pushes a little bit more of a specific style of play on you, but you get rewarded a lot by that first ability, giving you tons of mana to do what you want. But then Jace the Perfected Mind, if you build 4 card draw, you can do a lot of different things with it, and his abilities help with all that. So I give them both the same B plus across the board. Card utility. Jace Reawakened. His abilities, I mean, if you're using plot, you don't necessarily have to, but giving those 2 cards plot from his third ability is all you really need to do. You can use like lock and load if you wanted to, but it already has plot, so there's not a big reason to use plot 6 unless you plan on just exiling it from your hand at the end of your turn anyway. So that's pretty interesting in that way. And then Jace the Perfected Mind. Yeah, if you're using cards that take advantage of the amount of times you draw in a turn, then he's really good at that sort of thing. So it really just depends on what cards you're using. But if you build for their abilities, they are both pretty good at card utility. So I give Jace Reawakened just a slight edge on card utility just because of that first ability lets you use high cost mana cards without fear, but pretty evenly matched in that regard. Now we get to fun. Which one do I have more fun with? I mean, this can be very subjective because it really depends on the type of cards you really like to play and the type of ways you like to win and what's more important to you. Do you have a lot of fun completing objectives and scoring high in events? Well, they both can do that. But Jace Reawakened, you can play higher cost cards in your deck, so I feel like that's a lot of fun as well. So I personally give Jace Reawakened the edge here. They're pretty well matched in terms of fun that I like to use them for. I do think overall I like playing with Jace Reawakened a bit more. So, what are the final grades? How do they actually stack up against each other? Jace, the Perfected Mind, gets a B plus, and Jace Reawakened gets an A. So I would say Jace Reawakened is easily one of the best mono blue walkers in the game. I still think Teferi Chronoclast is a little bit better because blue PMA is so strong and it really takes advantage of all those cards in blue PMA. But Jace Reawakened can do a lot with a lot of strong cards, and he has a built-in win con, and that first ability is really great. Jace the Perfected Mind, though, I have really grown to like him a lot more than I did when I first got him. I think when I first tried him, I was trying to do a little bit too much with dealing with Phyrexian gems and all that. So if you ignore all that, which is kind of why I knock him down a little bit in the fun department, I just don't think that playing him with Phyrexian cards is really all that fun to me. But if you play him with a lot of card draw and all that, then he can be. So there you have it. That is my review of both of these guys. And yeah, I think that Jace Reawakened is going to be a really good Planeswalker to use in different events, such as Scotty Bloodline, where you're required to use monocolor walkers. I think he slots in very well with a lot of strategies there. So definitely think about using him if you like that event. Or, if you just like to play with a lot of high cost cards, he's really good at that as well. So I recommend both of these, but I would recommend Jace Reawakened just a tad bit more if you have to choose one or the other. So there you go. There is my review. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I really look forward to sharing with you news that I can't divulge yet, but it's coming very soon. Right now, I'm working on learning all about how awesome Dak Faden, the new Planeswalker, is. So keep an eye out for that one coming soon, and I'll see you then.